Welcome to the Create a Life You Love podcast, the go-to podcast for people who are called to make a positive impact through the power of coaching. You'll hear encouraging stories from coaches sharing their journeys and their lessons learned along the way, tips from top experts who help coaches thrive in their life and their business, and so much more. So if you're ready to create a business and a life of impact that you love, let's get started. Hello, everybody. We're so excited. Thank you for joining us here tonight on today's very special episode of the Create a Life You Love podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chantal Cox. I'm an author, speaker, transformation neurocoach, and certified life purpose coach who saves purpose-driven coaches from feeling stuck and overwhelmed and frustrated so you can get off the hamster wheel and make the aligned impact that you're destined for without the overwhelm and the burnout.
Absolutely. And I am another of your hosts, Gwen White, a quantum human design specialist and certified virtual coach specializing in coaching for introverts. So before we dive in today, let's definitely recognize our podcast season sponsor, the Create a Life You Love membership, an engaged and ever-growing community of passionate, purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are partnering up in powerful ways to increase their knowledge, momentum, and impact. For information and to apply, check out createalifeyoulove.com coaching/membership today.
Awesome. Okay, this episode is being streamed live. For sure, I just double-checked link in YouTube. I will keep refreshing Facebook here in a second. But if you're watching on Facebook, share any comments, questions in the chat, and please allow permissions using chat.restream.io/Facebook, and then we can see who you are and engage with you.
Absolutely. So once again this week, we've decided to give everyone a little peek behind the curtain and share something that most podcasters don't. And that is a year-end reflection and review. So Chantal, what exactly does that mean and why are we doing it?
Yes. So, as you all know, because we all have access to calendars, there's at the time of this filming, there's less than 1 month in the year left of 2022. So now is really the perfect time to take a step back and reflect as well as to look ahead. And so throughout our time together this evening, we will not only be reflecting and planning for the podcast, we will also be pointing back to you, our audience, because so many of you are current or aspiring coaches, entrepreneurs, podcasters, and authors. So getting to witness this podcast live and unrehearsed as it's happening will give you the tools and resources to adapt and use this process as well. And just so you know, in case you don't have a business, while we develop this process to be used specifically in our businesses, it can easily be adapted for all areas of your life. So whether you have a business or not, you will definitely want to stay tuned until the end of the episode because we will be sharing a link to a workbook that will guide you through this intentional practice where we are combining my knowledge of neuroscience and Gwen's knowledge of human design to help you get very intentional about creating an aligned business and a life of impact that you love in 2023.
Absolutely. So exciting. And I love that we're doing this. Can you share a little bit more about the format as we make some progress here?
Absolutely. Real quick, because I can see it for sure is on YouTube. I'm just going to copy that and get it pasted over in the community because people are looking for us and they can't find us anywhere on Facebook. Yeah. Okay. So at least it's in the community. Yeah. We have so many reasons why we are doing this conversation. One of which is there are things that aligned at one point that no longer do. And so we want to take some intentional time to reflect on that and move forward. With a lot of intentionality, not just flying by the seat of our pants, that kind of thing. So, thinking about kind of what we know about neuroscience, reflection is really critical in terms of basically, when you take the time to stop and reflect and look back, there's this like added benefit that you're going to be able to see some of the wins that were there, but you maybe overlooked them because you're pushing forward to the next thing on your to-do list. So you didn't pause and celebrate them. And so this piece is so important. The celebration piece feels so silly, but it's really important because when you acknowledge and celebrate your wins, no matter how big or small they are, your brain releases dopamine, and that's a like feel good chemical. And so the process of celebrating your wins really begins to start training your brain to want more of that feeling, which you are intentionally associating with the win. So basically, celebrating your wins allows you to really tap into the power of your brain and begin to build momentum in an automated way. I don't know how many of you know this or not, but 90% of our daily decisions and actions are run through our subconscious automations. So we're constantly just on autopilot, not stopping and thinking. We're just doing based off of how we've been conditioned and automated to run. So knowing this, Gwen and I really want to move forward and be very intentional about the automations that we're creating and make sure that they are aligned with the vision that we're creating and with our human design types. And so that's important to us, and we want to model and encourage you to do the same and connect you with all the tools and resources so that you can do that as well.
Absolutely. Yes. It's really interesting because we talk a lot about that automation that comes from our subconscious a lot in the membership. That's certainly one of the things that I've been talking about in the Supercharge Your Productivity Masterclass series. And of course, reflection is a really big part of this. So it is totally crucial. And I love that we're incorporating all of these things as we undergo and roll out this process. And yeah,
Absolutely.
that um, that point about reflection being really key.
Yeah, absolutely. It is just so key for all that. And then another really good reason to reflect is it's really important to have some way to kind of track your progress. You want to know that you're moving in your best, most aligned direction for you and your business. So, if we really stop and think about it for a minute, if we don't have a clear understanding of where you've been and where you're actually wanting to go, and if you don't have a way to measure in some way what's going well and what's not going well, then you can't improve it. And so we're just sitting there spinning our wheels. And so part of the process is that we're going to go over tonight is taking a look at what we've been doing and how we've been doing it. And then, like, I always jokingly blame my background as a special educator because I'm a bit of a data nerd. And so we're definitely going to be taking a look at some data and then make informed data-based decisions on what's working for us and what it might be time to tweak. So really, when I look back, I know I've evolved so much since I started this podcast in March of 2020. And back then, I had very specific, aligned reasons to set everything up the way that it's been going for over 100 episodes now. And so, what I'm really excited about is this opportunity to stop and look at this data and start asking really specific questions using both of our human design authority types to move forward in a really aligned way that matches where we are currently in this season of life, not 2+ years ago.
Right, absolutely. Timing is huge. In human design, in particular, in the quantum human design system, we talk so much about timing and how timing is so important. Understanding how human design plays into this process. We'll get more into that in a second, but I would love for you, Chantal, to also share why you think most people skip this most important step of reflecting.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and being like, "Ooh, I don't really do this very good," like, totally fine. Because guess what? Most people don't, myself included. I've, definitely not been as focused in this area, and that's something I want to improve moving forward. And I know from just supporting various clients over the years, like this is a common thing. And the reason I think it's so commonly overlooked, is because it's so easy for us to get trapped in that cycle of shiny object syndrome and so caught up in this like busyness of doing, and then there's just not much time or energy left to actually reflect, unless you stop and you make it a priority and you actually schedule it in on your calendar, which is a major reason why we're doing this reflection live right now. Because Gwen and I, we're both like incredibly busy. We have a lot going on in our lives, and we don't even live anywhere near each other. Like, we're not even in the same time zone. So,
Right.
yeah, the time that we get to spend together creating each podcast episode is often the only opportunity that we have to actually connect and have a real conversation. And since the annual review process is something that we want and definitely need to do anyway, we figured why not work smarter rather than harder and use this time that we already have scheduled to essentially do our annual review in a way that also serves our audience in an incredibly powerful way.
Absolutely. Amazing, Chantal. All really great points. And yes, I can totally verify that the listeners share that they get so much value from our podcast. Many people out there may not know this, but the Create a Life You Love podcast is in the top 3% of all podcasts, which is so phenomenal. It's just a testament to the work that you've put into this as the founder and as taking the helm all of these years. And I'm, again, just so thrilled to be a part of this new form. And so, as someone, who's also been fortunate to see the inner workings, I can attest to the fact that Create a Life You Love podcast is not only bringing this impactful information to the world, but it's also incredibly well organized. So, again, all credit to Chantal. One thing you mentioned, and one thing I'll be bringing to the table today as we reflect on 2022 and look ahead to 23, is how we actually apply our human designs in order to help us gain clarity in the most aligned way. Both Chantal and I are human design generator types. So, for example, we can really lean into and rely on our sacral or gut response to guide us through this or pretty much any process. And so, the key to tapping into our success, and this actually is counterintuitive to most coaching or consulting frameworks or even teaching, is to ask yes, no questions. Those are sometimes referred to as closed-ended questions. We're often told or taught to ask open-ended questions, but for 70% of the population, it's actually pretty terrible guidance because it's misaligned for them. The responses they'll get are not correct and are often going to be based on their conditioning, or they come from their head or mind, which, if you joined us for the Authority Challenge in the membership, you now understand that is not a good or reliable resource in important life matters like these.
Yeah, and I'm just incredibly excited and very intrigued about bringing human design into this exercise, because I have done many annual reviews in the past, but most of the time that alignment piece was missing. And so what I ended up mapping out led to overwhelm and a schedule of being really busy rather than being productive.
Yeah, and yeah, likewise. And I'm excited to support us in this way. In all that we do, we really do talk up alignment. And so, I mean, how misaligned would it be for us to undertake something like this without looking at such a foundational piece, this energetic configuration, the human design itself, knowing what we know? So, We're truly guided to do this in the most aligned way. Now, something kind of interesting is beyond our types, Chantal's and my designs are really very different. And I find we've found that these differences bring a lot of richness and variability in how we approach information, how we process things, how we interact with each other and with our community. We actually complement each other quite well. And of course, we complement each other too, haha, with the gifts and superpowers that we innately carry. So we'll talk again a little bit more about that as we move through this process.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that about our dynamic. I think it's just so unique what we bring together, like individually, but then when we're able to combine our backgrounds, our knowledges, our resources, it just really creates this very rich, multi level, very holistic package. It's super fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. For those of you out there who know Chantal or who have been tuning in to the podcast since the beginning or for a while, I'm really excited to give you a little peek behind her energetic curtain. Her superpowers, as you probably know, include being a virtuous teacher, grounded deeply in integrity, which naturally attracts the confidence of others. So she has this innate ability to guide, teach, and lead, and others are naturally drawn to her. She also tends to need to deeply research and embody the things that she teaches before she shares guidance around them. So we honor that very important part of her. And we, of course, embrace her wisdom and expertise, which we can rest assured that she's fully investigated and knows to be both accurate and highly impactful. So you can contrast that with my energy, which is more about an objective devotion to the community through creating and building sacred partnerships where I'm able to see the big picture and recognize opportunities, offer strategies, and insights. The leadership that I bring to the table more lies in my ability to create intimacy and rapport really quickly, and then understanding what the return on our collective investment is for everyone concerned. And then I can also help kind of oversee or guide the journey towards the most beneficial use of our time and resources. So those are just a little peek into the differences in our designs. And of course, we'll be tapping into these really specific aspects as we go through this exercise. So, but please note, for the purpose of the live exercise today, human design is really nuanced and it's also quite deep. So we'll really only be focusing on some of the more primary foundational aspects of our designs. Where if I were to take a client through a similar process, we would clearly go much more deeply into some of their energetic aspects, and that would require a lot more time and a very deep understanding of human design itself. So, are you good with that, Chantal? And notice, I asked that as a yes no question to allow your signal to respond.
Let's see. Yes, I'm ready. It sounds amazing. Um, So, again, for anyone watching us live, thank you. If you have been playing Hunt and Peck and you are finding us slowly, watch the first few minute background after we're done here tonight to kind of understand what's going on. But be sure to stick around until the end, where we will be sharing a companion workbook that shares this annual review methodology and also includes questions that you can use for your own year end reflection process. And just due to basic time constraints, because no one wants to be here till midnight, we'll mainly focus on the reflect part. And so we hope that you'll stay until the end in order to get the workbook, which goes into all of the things. So it's a joke between Gwen and I because I say that a lot.
All the things. I
All
love
the
it.
uh, so enough background. I'm ready to get started. You ready?
I am ready. Absolutely.
Okay, little data nerd coming out here. I pulled some stats. And so, again, we're just focusing on podcast right now. And I will be sharing some things, some stats. So, any links of like kind of recommended places for podcast stats that you might want to have access to track your own podcast progress, it's all going to be in the workbook. So, don't get too distracted about links right now. Just kind of focus on the content, and you'll get everything at the end in the workbook where you can go through step by step and really focus and have a lot of intentionality around your process. And I feel like if I say intentionality one more time, you all need to turn it into a drinking game, and then we'll really have some fun.
Why not?
Why not? What the hell, right? Okay. So, um, kind of the numbers I pulled is I looked up, we kicked off season 4 on September 12th, 2022. And it was different because we're introducing the new format of having Gwen on as a co host. And so, for the purposes of this conversation, we're only looking at the stats from that time period. And right now, as we speak, we're actively recording our 15th episode together. So, we only have data for the 14 episodes. But one of the main things that any podcaster wants to look at is stats provided by your podcasting hosting platform. And so when you are trying to decide what host you want to go with, that should be a consideration, by the way. But so we have chosen to go with podbean.com. And that shows in the last 3 months, our most downloaded episode that we've done together was the 100th episode Tell All. We have
Ooh,
had, and I updated this earlier today, it was different yesterday. We've had
nice.
812 downloads since the beginning of September. And not surprisingly, but it's just good to know that 62.78% of all of our downloads are coming from Apple Podcasts. So that just gives us some things to think about, like in terms of where we want to promote, how we want to promote, things like that. So, as you mentioned earlier, there is a site called listennotes.com, and they rank and give listening scores, and they have us globally ranked in the top 3% of all podcasts. And when I pulled, no, it's crazy. We found that out just a couple weeks ago when we had Genesis Amaris Kemp on, and I asked her because she always says what percent she's at. I'm like, how do you even know that? So, listennotes.com. Again, the link will be in your workbook at the end. And when I pulled the stats yesterday, they have that right now globally, there's right under 3 million active podcast shows. So to be in the top 3% of that is definitely worth celebrating.
I can't agree more.
Yeah. So when looking at those rankings and thinking about where that comes from, the rankings are really impacted mainly by like the number of plays as well as the number of reviews. And so you'll notice every week we talk about, please go leave us a review at ratethispodcast.com. And so in the last 90 days, we have received 15 podcast reviews on using ratethispodcast.com. Most of them have been on Apple, which is where we want them anyway. Like that's where it has the most bang for the buck. So data showing that, parts of what we're doing is really working quite nicely. Um,
That is exciting.
yeah. So if we think about just when I started the podcast back March 2020, my vision, I had a small little Facebook group. I was about a year after publishing my book. I was just about to finish my coaching certification. So I felt like I was very young in terms of my coaching journey at that point. And so I started and had a vision to not only expand my audience through podcasting platforms, but to also really build up my Facebook group, which is the Cradle I Feel Love community, because I wanted it to kind of two birds, one stone. It's out on the podcast, but I'm also providing consistent value and creating interactive experience for my audience and continually bringing people back. Come watch us on the event, and here's the event, come share the replay, all the things. So see, there I go again, all the things. And so in this time frame, while podcasting is only one of the ways that I'm attracting people to the Facebook group, since the time I started the podcast in March 2020, the group has gone from 278 people to 522 people. So that means it's almost doubled. So no judgment on those numbers, on if someone's like, oh, my group has 10K. Amazing for you. I'm so excited for you. I have 522 and I'm very happy about it. um,
Absolutely. And yeah, being able to track, you know, that stat along with, you know, the inception of the podcast over time, I think is really, you know, telling. It's, you know, it's popular. You're also really heavily promoting the podcast within the Facebook group. And I think um, people are finding it, the right people.
yeah. Um, yeah, so we're looking back, like literally almost every single one of the 108 episodes that are out there have been streamed live into the group and then released the following week on the podcasting host, the Podbean. So there have been a couple of occasions that I pre recorded in order to accommodate my schedule or the schedule of a guest, and still ended up kind of releasing it at that 7 o'clock Central Time on a Tuesday. Um, and in order to do that, in case you're wondering, like I've gone about it a couple different ways. I started just going live from Zoom. I've tried out StreamYard. Most recently, we've been trying Restream. And so, looking at stats, 11 of the 14 episodes from season 4 have been done using Restream, and the other were done via Zoom. But Restream does compile some analytics that shows across all platforms that we stream to, YouTube, LinkedIn, and a couple places on Facebook when it wants to work for us. Um,
Right?
yeah, not today, of course. But so 7 people, we average 7 people that join us live for each episode. And of those 7, 2.25 people participate via chat. So we have some people that just watch and a couple that participate. And then 7.5 messages are happening through that chat. So those 2.25 people are putting something more than once as the episode goes on. Again, that's an average. There might have been one person on one episode and 10 on another. And, we all went to math. You know how that works. So, um,
Exactly.
yeah.
But yeah, and again, it's really interesting for listeners to, yeah, understand what's realistic, you know, what's typical when you're doing a podcast in this format, in this way, with the promotions that are essentially done. That, yeah, live listeners, you know, there may be more or fewer depending on obviously people's availability, but because it is live at a very specific time on a very specific day, clearly that's going to limit the number of live listeners who can join depending on their availability, and those that choose to chat, and of course when chat features are working, obviously they're going to chime in when it feels aligned for them. But yeah, so really, it's really interesting to me to see this information. Really cool.
Yeah, it was fun to kind of pull and think about, and it'll walk you through in the workbook too, kind of some questions to think about and brainstorming. Okay, what are all the stats available for this area that I'm reflecting on right now? And then really thinking about, okay, I don't probably need to track all of them long term, and getting really laser focused on what's aligned for you. I do want to point on 2 other things that are super duper important, that I don't have exact numbers for necessarily, but especially if you're doing something business related, if you're reflecting on something in your business or your business as a whole, it's really important to look at the financial piece as well, obviously, because you want to run a business, not have a very expensive hobby. And so to run and promote the podcast as is right now, when I look through and total up all the different things, the restream, the repurpose.com to make the clips, like all the things. So it's about $122 per month. So something we want to look at and talk about is examining what's called the ROI, the return on investment. And it needs to be considered as definitely part of the annual review. But depending on what you're looking at, you might want to look at it more often, such as monthly or quarterly. And then another key factor, because you can make more money, but you can't necessarily like generate more time. Once it's gone, it's gone. So you want to consider your return on time invested as well. And the way we have it currently set up, you guys see us live for an hour a week, but there's a significant amount of work for both Gwen and myself each and every week, just in preparing and promoting. Just making it all work, connecting with the guests, getting the schedule, sending multiple emails, making sure the events are up. And so the way we currently have it set up, we want to look at that and keep all those things in consideration. Okay. Are we datted out now? Do we have a clear enough picture of the purpose of our discussion tonight?
Yeah, I think we can totally kind of kick off now, having some statistics to sort of jump off from that gives, I think, our listeners and us just an overall impression of where we've been and kind of performance stats, if you will. And then also, it's really interesting to think about investment, at least a financial investment. Obviously, we've never tallied up, the hours of time. And if we started looking at that, the investment is hugely significant. But again, it's a really podcasting is a really great tool for marketing, promoting, making an impact, creating that community, building it out, and reaching them in a way that no other kind of marketing platform does. So again, also bringing guests to them that they might not have access to, having those conversations and letting them know who all is out there, what they're doing, how they're doing it. You really can't touch that with any other medium play. So again, the investment, so to speak, and tallying up or calculating the return on investment can be a little tricky in looking at this data. But yes, I think we can now really kind of shift into sort of the questioning phase at this point, and reflecting on that data.
Real quick before we go into our first question,
Sure.
big shout out, even though I just shouted you out not knowing you were with us live. Genesis Amari's Kemp is with us live.
Ooh,
Welcome. She has
nice.
some great comments. She's joining us over on YouTube. She did have a question.
Ooh,
And the question is, what tool are you using for human design? And again, all those links are going to be in the workbook that'll be shared at the end, but it's also kind of easy to say and remember. And Gwen, I'm going to let you do that part so I don't mess it up.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I love using mybodygraph.com, particularly when you're just getting into human design. Their free body graph tool offers you an immense amount of information, obviously for free. And it's a really great tool to kind of get to know human design, to look at your own chart. And because of the way that little website or application works, it really has a lot of bang for the buck. So great ROI there. And then we've actually created a little resource to go along with the chart that you'll pull, or charts in the case, if you have, like in our case, there's two of us. But if you do have, more than one person on your team, you'll clearly want to pull charts for each and every one of you. And then using the workbook, we've set up essentially a page with human design summaries for the type, which also includes language that speaks to your strategy, which is like your kind of operating system. And then you'll also find summaries for your authority, which is the decision-making process that's most aligned for you. And then your profile, which really speaks to how you interact with others, with the world, and how they perceive you, as well as your learning style. Really important, again, foundational information, and we've put it into kind of bite-sized pieces so that it's very easy for you to kind of get in and quickly understand the basics of each person's human design. So
Love
by all
it.
means, Genesis, get that workbook, because I think that will be a really great way for you to look at the human design piece of this.
Definitely. Because, yeah, what we can do together in this time is limited, but the workbook really has a lot more information where you can really, really slow down and process and go in depth in this process.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, let's get into the Q&A.
Yes. All right. So, um, when we look at like reflecting on the data that we did collect, what are some of the wins that we have had? What stands out to you?
So I immediately think about just the sheer volume um, of content that's been created. I think that's a massive win. When you think about us kicking off the season in mid-September, and we're currently on the 15th episode, doing a weekly show, you really are able to create a lot of impactful content, in a pretty short period of time, which can be particularly since we also, this podcast is a video podcast as well as an audio podcast, that, for anyone who's doing a podcast to seriously consider the video aspect, I think, because all of that content can serve double duty for you. So that to me is a big one. And for you, Chantal, what is a win that you would like to highlight?
Yes, there are several. I really like the ones that you picked. I think overall, I'm just really proud of kind of like the evolution and the growth. Having this podcast has continually pushed me out of my comfort zone and created so much opportunity for networking, connecting, growing in so many ways, personally and within the business and my coaching skills. And all the things like the social media skills and learning how to make little clips, and it's just so much. uh, it it has provided a reason, like, to make it purposeful, because I don't know that I'd
Mm,
ever just be like, oh, let me make an hour long video content and then figure out how to cut it up into little clips and then figure out how to put it on a template and then figure out how to put captions and
exactly.
then figure out like, oh, or like all these things. I wouldn't have had a reason. And so I'm, I think it's a win that it's created the opportunities for growth and that we both in several ways have stepped in to those opportunities, accepted those opportunities, and grown tremendously.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up what you did. The stat that I pointed to was very kind of tangible and concrete. Some of the things that you're talking about, skill building specifically, and um, you know, growth, which is what's happening when you're doing things at the edge of your comfort zone. Those things are less tangible, and so again, those are really personal benefits. And again, hard to put an ROI on those things, but you as someone who's dedicated to developing yourself, both personally and professionally, you recognize those benefits, and that is truly what's most important. You also recognize you can take those things that you've learned and then bring them back to your community, back to, create a life you love as a community and into the membership. So then those things can actually be tangibly tracked. And we can really see that time investment, the skill building, we can truly then see a return on that investment.
Absolutely. Yeah. The ability to um, see an opportunity for growth, step into it, learn a new skill, and then having a platform to turn around and share that skill with, like all the content and the tutorials and the screen shared tutorials, step by step, that I get to create for our members so that they don't have to um, necessarily, like, just to shorten that learning curve. They don't necessarily have to try 10 different places of who's the best one to get the clips. Like, I can let you know, like, this is good because of this, and this is good because of this. And then we can talk about what aligns well with you, your needs, and things like that. So that does help bring that tangible, because then I can see
Mm,
the people that I'm helping with that. Um, and then obviously, like, the super tangible stats would be, we're in the top 3%.
exactly.
And then we can, like, set a goal of, okay, well, can we by this time next year be in the top 1%,
Right.
or whatever that looks like. And another really tangible stat that I was very proud of is, yes, in 3 months, we've had over 800 downloads, which is amazing. But total, we're at 5.4 thousand total downloads for all the episodes since the start of time. And that to me is just mind boggling, because some of those numbers I didn't even know were really a thing. They weren't really a goal. So now that I see them, now that I know them, now I can plot a direction, and that's another really huge benefit of this reflection process and of the data collection process. Because now it's like going on a road trip. If you don't know, hey, I want to be in New York by this time for this event. If you're just like, oh, I'm just going to drive around willy nilly, and you don't know where you're going, when you're going to get there, you're going to miss whatever cool event that we were hoping to get to in New York.
Right, exactly, if that was your goal. um, yeah, no, all of these points that we're covering kind of brings me to another question, which is, we've talked about some wins. Um, we've also pointed at what's going well. And of course, you've also hinted at what we want to keep doing. So, yeah, I think that we might get a little more specific at this point. So, knowing some of these things, knowing now what are things that are going well that may have even just been revealed to us, for example, what do we want to keep doing?
Yeah. You kind of hit on two that I had kind of jotted down earlier as ones, in terms of, like, the video format. I think it's more personal when someone has the option to see what you look like and see, like, your mannerisms. But then there's also the audio, so they don't have to if that doesn't work, because they're doing it while they're working out or driving or whatever and listening in. Um,
Exactly. You're
so I
vacuuming the
like the
floor.
video, yeah, the video format for the personal reasons, and then providing so much more options for promoting. And then I also really like having the guests. And so you kind of talked about that. And because I love expanding my network, I love highlighting people making an impact. I love introducing those people doing amazing things in the world to my community, and just bringing so much more richness to the community than I could do on my own. Um, but so something that we haven't really touched on yet is I do like the consistency of releasing an episode weekly.
Mhm.
And I feel like that is key to the successes we have seen so far in terms of how we're at those downloads and that ranking. And then I also really like having seasons. Some people just, it's just one solid season. That just what episode are they on? And I'm on season 4, and in my head, each season has had a little bit of a different flair or focus. And so I
Mhm.
really like having seasons because it allows someone who's a little bit of a like concrete thinker, it allows me it allows for kind of pivots, and it also allows for some breaks. There have been times I've been stepping into a new role in my career and been like, you know what, it's going to be real busy at the start of the school year. I'm going to pick back up. We're going to do season 3 in October. See you guys then, bye. And then I can put it aside and then come back later and pivot when I can really give it my all. Um, with that being said, I always do see a drop in downloads because people aren't in that habit of, oh, it's Monday, she released a new podcast, I'm going to listen to that. Or, oh, it's Tuesday, she's going live, I'm going to tune in for that. So I lose some of that momentum. But again, kind of that weighing, like the ROI, like, is it worth, and what's in alignment? What's worth
Exactly.
my sanity or ability to feel really proud about the episodes coming out into the world.
Absolutely. So with that consideration, I think it's probably the perfect time to kind of throw in a truly, aligned question. Um, Again, a yes no question that really speaks to energy. So, do you get energized by creating the podcast episodes live each week?
Mhm. Yes, and and I don't know how that falls in with human design and sacral authority, how the yes and falls in there. Because yes, I do. There have been times, last week, for example. Um, so unless you're kind of a personal friend of mine, you are not aware that I am healing from a ziplining accident that occurred on Thanksgiving. So last Tuesday, I'm feeling much better today. Stitches should come out tomorrow. Um,
Okay.
Yes, super excited. But so last Tuesday is one example of a
Right.
time. And when I know you've had these times, and there was a time I was like dead to the world with COVID, and I still
Oh,
just was like in this the show must go on mentality and like push forward, just show up for an hour, just make it happen. Um, and part of that was because I had a guest and I didn't want to flake on them. Like they had rearranged their schedule, and part of it was the live aspect of people expect me to go live, and all 7 of them or whatever, and which to me is like amazing, that there would be an average of 7 people who cared to take time in their schedule to come on live. um,
yeah,
and by the end of the episode, no matter how crummy I was feeling before I hit go live, I do get re-energized by doing it.
absolutely. Yeah. And as I look at your actual human design, of course, I've got our design charts up, which I, again, encourage you all to do when you're going through this. But again, my knowledge of human design is a little deeper than, maybe some of you, but I'm looking at your chart. You have the gate of struggle. And it's actually in there quite deeply. And Interestingly, it's associated with a particular energy in your chart that has to do with rewards, which is really interesting in that you actually feel rewarded when there's a struggle. Now, the trick with this energy, and it's a very ambitious energy, by the way. My husband also carries this energy, so I'm quite familiar with it. But the trick with struggle is that it does need to be worth it. So that's yet another layer with, with this particular expression. And your indication of, even when you're not necessarily feeling your best, by the end of that episode, you're essentially glowing. You feel much better. And obviously, when you are feeling good, every time you record an episode live, in the energy of another coach, or even if it's just us two, there's this synergy that happens. There's inspiration that occurs, and those are things, again, looking at your design, that are incredibly beneficial to you. So those are really interesting things that I look at when I look at someone's human design. Chantal has what's called an undefined throat center, which means she really needs another person. I'm the same way. I have an open throat. So those of us who have the undefined throat center are really good when we're at our best, frankly, when we are working in connection with others, because oftentimes we'll find that connection, we connect up, and all of a sudden it's much easier to express ourselves. All of a sudden, energy of manifestation and expression and communication flows much more easily. It's like the light bulb comes on and insights start flowing. So those are things that I look at when I look at human design. And of course, when you're talking about doing episodes in a live format, those things are important to consider.
So it's I love
And
every
you and
time
I
that
both
you bring
being
it.
generators, we have the energy also to bring to the table.
Yeah.
Certain other um, individuals who are not a generator or a manifesting generator type, they may not necessarily have the energy to do a weekly live podcast. They would really need to consider, doing their podcast in another way, perhaps, whether it be batching when they do have the energy available and they do have the time, or spacing out, their episodes.
Yeah.
Maybe not weekly, bi-weekly, or even monthly. So all things to
Yeah.
consider. But yes, we've got a lot of energy between us, you and I.
Yes. And I've always been very collaborative and drawn to that. And I initially started with an interview format because I'm like, oh my gosh, just the thought of getting on Zoom and like talking to someone excited me. The thought of getting on Zoom and talking to myself, I was like, I
Right.
I have
Yeah.
no desire to do that. Like, there was no energy at it. Like, could I force myself to do it? 100%. I'm really good at forcing myself to do it, but that's what leads to the overwhelm and the burnout and the not getting a good ROI, whether it's financially, emotionally, and like all the considerations, energy wise.
Exactly. Yeah. I
So,
mean, again, it's either aligned or it's not.
yeah.
Um, Again, if you think of someone like Oprah, she's a generator. Guess where she's shown? It was in connection with others. She was a brilliant interviewer. She is a perfect example of a generator, actually, obviously in their highest expression. But yeah, she needed other people. And the content that she brought to the table truly were her guests and their wisdom, their brilliance. She was just able to tease it out.
Yeah. So, again, just to let everyone know, because I am looking at the time, that in a moment we'll give you the workbook link and you will have a list of questions and a formatted structure to really go in depth. And but I do want to hit base as um, value wise, but time concisely as possible on this, Gwen, because I do feel like
Yeah.
things like this are going to come up. So here's kind of the dilemma in this framework that we're doing is okay, so my design says the way I originally did the podcast is in alignment, even though I knew nothing about human design back then. And I still only know like a teeny tiny portion. Like I love learning about it. It's super
Right.
fascinating. Um, so it's been in alignment. It was in alignment that season. I also did it that way because I felt like I needed that accountability and consistency
Mhm.
of just knowing, nope, Tuesdays at 7, this is what I'm doing. So I could tell somebody asked, hey, in 3 weeks, can we do this? Well, sorry. Tuesday at 6:30. Nope, probably can't be there because I'm getting ready to go live. Have fun though. So I wanted that consistency. But now 108 episodes later, I've proven to myself that I can show up. I can do this consistently. I've expanded my skill set. I've expanded my confidence, and I am in a different season of life. Now, my 9 to 5, it requires a lot of travel.
Mm.
Um, I'm not 2 years younger. We're not in COVID. The world is open. I can leave my house and go do things socially and things.
Right.
And so, um, what are some tips if somebody's like, okay, it was aligned, it matches my design, I've evolved, but my design hasn't really evolved, but I'm feeling called to make some type of change. And I don't know exactly what that looks like yet. Like you and I will have more discussions off camera for the sake of
Right.
everyone's time. But yeah, so I'm sure you're
Yeah.
picking up what I'm putting down.
Absolutely. So at this point, and again, that's another thing that you also have to, pull into the consideration. Someone doesn't just exist in a vacuum. Their design is, just one peek at who they are. You are not your design. You are, a teacher. You're, a friend. You're wanting to build your life out in this very specific way. And you do have, a 9 to 5. You do travel for your job. So those are draws on your energetic resources. And therefore, again, shifting how a podcast is created may be more aligned, than sticking with the same way. So then you would question, would you like to try a new format? Would you like to try a new method of creating, producing this podcast? And then waiting for that sacral response.
Just
And,
while you were
and
asking it, I felt like in my stomach, like a pulling towards you, like a yes, like yes, that excites me. I want to dig into that more. Not right this second, but I'm like, yeah, what might that look like? What can we do? Like that's exciting. Um,
Exactly. Yeah, and
so
we've talked about the idea of batching. So that's another question track that we could take this on. Obviously, we would go with a yes no question. Would it be more satisfying to produce this podcast by batching some of the tasks or all of the things? Again, those lines of questioning. Now, that's a kind of a big question. You might even break it down further.
yeah,
And again,
there are
yeah,
a lot of things that yeah, I would need to process and maybe break it down more into this
yeah,
piece. Do we want to batch this, and what does that look like? And really figuring
yes,
out the aligned way for each piece. But yeah, okay.
absolutely. And then there's also the idea of taking a break, because we will, be taking a short break, obviously, for the holiday season coming up. And then you start thinking about, well, would you like to take a longer break than has been scheduled? Because
Mhm.
sometimes you're just tired.
Yeah.
You're just, yeah, your energy, it is finite. I don't care, if you're a generator, a manifesting generator with every motor center defined, you still have to rejuvenate. And again, that is a big, big part of what we're talking about with this process is the rejuvenation piece. The more and more we know about productivity, the more we understand that rest has to be prioritized in order to maintain a high level of productivity. And again, human design aside, that's just a part of being human. So, yeah, those are all things that should be a part of the review process, is the idea of what will you be doing to rejuvenate yourself as well, as, and when do that, how do you take care of yourself?
Well, I'm going on a road trip to spend New Year's Eve in Florida, and
Ooh,
then on the way
nice.
back, hitting New Orleans for the first time ever. So that's what I'm gonna do over my break to rejuvenate.
Mm,
But yeah, so think about that. All these things,
mhm.
guys. We really hope that this sneak peek of a tiny segment of this review process was valuable to just kind of see,
Right.
um, if you're a solopreneur, or you're doing an area of your life that only involves you, you can still have these discussions. You could talk to someone. You could jump into the membership and get access to us as your coaches, to get some one-on-one support walking through some of this stuff. Um, but
But
yeah,
yeah, the
so
workbook has like all of the questions we've been essentially posing, they're essentially all in there so that
mhm.
you have at least a place to jump off from. And again, whether you're applying this to a podcast, an actual business, or just your own, personal life, it all applies. It all applies.
Well, awesome. Let's kind of start wrapping it up and closing down. Um, so yeah, I really value this process that we've created together, bringing both of our skill sets and backgrounds. I'm super duper excited to finish this conversation with you. Probably not tonight because we both had long days. This time of the evening might not be the best energetic time for us to be really doing this visionary mapping out things. Um, so we'll get that
Timing.
on the
Timing.
timing. Um,
Exactly. So yes, that's another consideration. Make sure that when you are undergoing this, when you decide to sit down with this process, that maybe you time block it. You give yourself and do it at a time, obviously, when you have the time to really lean into it, but that your energy is also in a good place, that you've rested and you have the energy to devote to it. Yeah. And yeah, this has frankly been such an invaluable start to this exercise. It's kind of already prompting me to reflect on what all we've created together and consider what direction is going to be most aligned for us, as we move forward into the new year. So I want to thank you, Chantal, for actually suggesting it and for including me.
Absolutely. Thank you for your willingness of everything that all the hoops that you've jumped through in the last 15 episodes to try and figure out my neurosis of organization.
I will call it brilliance and like inspiration. I find it incredibly motivating and inspiring. I know that there are certain things that like this is totally her ballywick, and it's like she's amazing. She truly is the workbook queen. I can't believe like she can put together a workbook in like an hour or two, and they're beautiful. So like if for nothing else, you get that workbook just to you know bask in the glory of how pretty it is. So yeah, and I don't see that way. So yeah, I like that we are able to use the superpowers that we each have.
Yeah.
We each bring something very unique, and we're able to also bring others into the mix as well.
Absolutely. It's been an amazing time together. Like I was saying, I'm very excited for the opportunity to go through this process with you, for the podcast and then for the membership. And I'm definitely going to use it for some of my own personal goals. And so, seriously, everyone watching and listening, if you found like what we've shared, the pieces of this exercise and content valuable, like we really encourage you to check out the information about the membership at createalifeyoulovecoaching.com/membership, because both Gwen and I are in there sharing content similar to the things that you've gotten to experience on the podcast, but we're able to do so at a much more in-depth level and with additional support. So just like one example, we're currently offering 3 monthly masterclass series, and one of them is the Alignment and Transformation Through Human Design series that Gwen is doing. And so if as you're progressing through this episode, through the alignment activities in the workbook, if you are just feeling really lit up and called to go even further in deeper into how human design can help you build an aligned business and a life of impact, like the massive value provided just in that series alone is life changing. So you've heard me talk today a little bit about how, my vision for how I approach my business and my life has dramatically shifted from, the ways I was conditioned to just kind of be hustle and grind, to where now I'm looking ahead to 2023 and I'm saying, F that. I'm not doing that. Like, it doesn't work for me. I'm over it. Right. And so now I can really ask questions and make decisions aligned with the current me and the season of life I'm in and the person I want to be and the business I want to build. And so I I'm aware enough to know like this transformation began prior to Gwen, because I was posting about it in my social media when she reached out and she's like, we are like speaking the same language. Let's talk. And I'm like, yay, let's talk. You want to do this membership with me? How about being on a podcast? What do you think? um, but so the transformation began prior to that, prior to us starting in this official capacity. But the content that is being provided through the alignment series it's just been a catalyst to like massive acceleration of this personal transformation in this area. And I think about it and I'm like, holy cow, we're only halfway through the series. Like, I don't even have all the content yet. And so I'm just excited to kind of like look forward. I think it's going to wrap up sometime this summer. We'll just say June-ish. Like,
Yeah.
I hope everyone is ready for this cohort of like seriously aligned coaches that are going to be out there like crushing it and creating an impact in the most aligned ways possible. Meaning there's not going to be the, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. Oh gosh, I'm struggling with burnout. Like, they can just serve at this high level and step into that version of themselves of creating that impact that been put on this earth to be. And so I just really, really feel passionate about what is occurring in the membership, and so thankful for what's being created there. And I just really hope that you'll thoughtfully consider joining us if, any part of that is exciting you and you want part of that to be part of your like 2023 success story too.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're not into high pressure sales because that's, clearly not something that's aligned for us. The businesses that we're building, you know, for a large percentage of the people out there, again, we respect and honor that and are here to, to act as guides and resources. And that's the type of content that we are creating. We want to make sure that we are creating content that's aligned for our community, that is content that they are asking for. And so that's the direction we move. So, when you step in, you'll also be helping to essentially inform how the membership expands and grows and the types of content that you would like to see. What what skills are you looking to build? Um, what goals do you have with your life, with your business, and how can we serve you in that capacity? So, yeah, we
Absolutely.
definitely want you to join us if it feels right to do so.
Yeah. And if you're not sure, like we offer complimentary clarity calls because we don't want you to do something. Like if you tell us, this is my vision, this is where I'm at, like we're going to know pretty quick, like, oh my gosh, this is perfect for you. Or okay, let's take a beat. Let's look at some of these other resources that might be better suited for you, and we're going to help guide you to something that's aligned with you. Like we're not like membership and that's the only thing. Like no, like we really truly want what's good for you. And I do want to mention that right now we do have still the holiday special going on. It will expire December 11th. And so when you go to createalifeyoulovecoaching.com/membership, you can use the coupon code Grateful22. And um, here's what I want to do. Okay, because it's the 6th and it expires on the 11th and it's not coming out on the podcast till the 12th. We're kind of playing this fun little game of when things are released where. But if you aren't sure, so you're not like all in with the application, and the application will guide you through and kind of let you know if you're fit or not. Also, it'll either be like, yes, perfect, or hey, let's click this link, let's book a call, let's talk further and make sure that we're on the same path here. Um, so if you're unsure, but you book a call before December 11th, even if the call has to take place after December 11th because of scheduling conflicts, we will still honor this holiday special, which is the 50% off of your first month. And if you're listening to this on the 12th, just message us. Like we're gonna trust you. Like this is the first time I've heard about it. Like what can we do? And who knows? If it's several months down the road, we'll probably have some other type of fun thing going on. So then we can cross that bridge when it comes. But for like the immediate kind of next few days, use Grateful22 as your coupon code. All the information is at createalifeyoulovecoaching.com/membership. So click on that for more information, click on it to apply, click on it to just book a call and be like, what's this about? And tell us about your journey, and we can help you decipher um, what an aligned next step for you is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, if you're just curious, get in touch by all
Yeah.
means. We would love to have a conversation. And without further ado, as we've been promising everyone, here's how you can actually access the workbook for the Reflect, Regroup, Rejuvenate process that you can discover all on your own, and you can also understand the true power of having a plan that can be used every day. So this workbook has all the things, and we definitely want to encourage you to get your own copy. So we'll pop that link, obviously, in the show notes. It's up on the screen now. It is at createalifeyoulovecoaching.com/reflect22. So get in there, grab your workbook, and start your reflect, regroup, and rejuvenate review.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. This was just such an important episode. And so thanks for sticking with us a few minutes later today. And so thank you for joining us. And, um, we've talked about this show's theme this month is really looking at taking a brief rejuvenation break and then resuming our session in the new year. But before we go into break, we still have 2 more episodes. And so next week, we'll be welcoming a positive mental attitude coach, Margine Christensen. And Margine, or Coach MJ, is a relationship marketing expert who helps her clients learn how to use Facebook to grow their business organically and stay out of Facebook jail through training and coaching services. She also hosts a free monthly group coachathon, which offers you a ringside seat to see what coaching can do for you and your business. And this is going to be a phenomenal episode, especially for anyone using Facebook for their marketing, but also for those who struggle with mindset and motivation.
Absolutely. I absolutely love Margine. She's joined us for our Authority Challenge, and she's actually someone that I went through a coaching program with. So I adore this woman. There is no one more positive than Coach MJ. So I can't wait until next week. So what for each of you was your favorite takeaway from today? I hope each of you has received some value from this episode. And of course, we invite you to share it with someone who would enjoy and also benefit from it. And Chantal and I would also be incredibly grateful if you would leave a podcast review at ratethispodcast.com/Calil. That's ratethispodcast.com/CALYL. You can quickly and easily review the podcast from your mobile device by grabbing the link in the comments and show notes.
Yes. And so we're not going on official break yet. I'm not jumping in my car and driving to Florida yet. So you will be able to find us live next week in the Create a Life You Love community, or you can catch all the episodes on your favorite podcasting platform. And so Create a Life You Love community on the Facebook group, and we will see you there, most likely not on Restream. Gwen, ask me a yes/no question about if we're continuing with Restream.
Chantal, do you want to keep Restream?
Hell no, over it.
I know. Oh my gosh.
It's the final straw.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
Right there with you.
Perfect. All right.
It does some fancy stuff, but hey, the fanciness, the return on the fanciness investment, it's not been.
Yes. So what would be return on fanciness? ROFI, Rafi. The Rafi is negative 2 million right now. So sorry, Restream. Bye.
Right.
But for everyone else, we will see you next week. We're only canceling Restream, not you. So don't cancel us. All right. We've clearly hit our slap happiness of the evening. So Goodbye, everyone. Enjoy the journey.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Create a Life You Love podcast. We would love to hear from you about your biggest takeaways. Share them with us on Facebook or Instagram at Create a Life You Love Coaching. If you loved this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. If you're ready to build aligned and sustainable momentum without overwhelm and burnout, we invite you to apply for the Create a Life You Love membership on our website, createalifeyoulovecoaching.com/membership. That's it for now. Enjoy the journey.